Hello, good to see you. Pastor Sam with a reflection on, I'm not quite sure what to call this. The title says physicality, but it's not in terms of touching other people. I guess on being in a place and being a part of that place, that I suppose community is maybe the best way to describe that. But I think community as we understand it is a bit too broad for what I want to reflect upon today. So I'm a little hesitant to use the word community. I don't even know what title I should use to talk about this thing, but we'll talk about it and maybe arrive at a clever conclusion that I can use. If you're new to this series, this is my reflection series. And what I'm doing is looking at life theologically. What I mean by that is looking at things that occur in our lives and reflecting on what are some things that God has done or that God has said that can cause us to maybe go down one path or another in these various issues. Last time I talked about marijuana. The time before that, I don't remember what I talked about, but you can go back and watch those. So today we're going to talk about community in a certain sense of the word, physicality. I guess what I'm going to call being in a place. Being in a place. What I want to do is talk about the benefits of being in a place and also the escapes that are possible for our not needing to be in a place and sort of discuss the price that we pay to have that possibility. Now, what I want to start off with are the benefits of being in a place, being in a community. Community, I'm going to say, is a definite geographical location. For the sake of this video, Pierre and Fort Pierre, right? I am in the Pierre Fort Pierre community, that geographical place bounded by the city limits of Pierre and Fort Pierre. This is a very certain, definite, physical community. I can go to various restaurants in this community and interact with the very definite physical people who also happen to reside in this community. I was going to say walk downtown. I guess I could walk downtown. I probably wouldn't run into anyone, but I can go to activities at the high school and the middle school, and I can interact with very definite students and very definite parents who attend this community. Now, the benefit of this is that these tend to be the same people. There are only so many people in the Pierre Fort Pierre community, and I am bound to run into them again and again at the grocery store, stopping for gas, at these activities, or going out to eat, right? I'm going to run in, and you've probably seen me at some of these places. I'm sure you've seen me at church. That's probably why you're even watching this. But out in the world, in the Pierre Fort Pierre community, you have probably seen me, maybe come up and talked with me, or maybe I've come up and talked with you. And that's a wonderful thing. That is, I think, the primary benefit of being in a community, being in a place. We see each other on a somewhat regular basis. I'm not so concerned about how often that occurs, but there's only so many faces to see in the Pierre Fort Pierre community, and my face happens to be one of those. Your face happens to be another one, and so our faces are going to see each other on a somewhat regular basis. Now, this helps to build something of a community identity. So take, if you will, the Govs' recent football victory, right? That is a win for not only those students who played on that football team and who achieved that victory, that is also a victory in a slightly different sense for our community. What I mean by that is that, say there's 15,000 people in our peer Fort Pierre community. There are certainly not 15,000 people playing on the football team, but we are all together. We could have watched or heard that game. We are maybe connected in some way, again, to those folks playing on the football team. We feel a sense of accomplishment when our team wins a championship. And that's a very wonderful thing. I'm certainly not saying anything negative about that. Our team, we feel this sense of not necessarily ownership, but maybe shared, not even shared interest. It's stronger than shared interest. Again, I want to use things like communal. I don't have words to say this, and that's what makes it so very frustrating to talk about, because I think there just aren't words to say what I want to say. And what I really struggle with, I worry that something has been lost, that something valuable has been lost. And I'll get to that a little bit when I start talking about the negative side of things. But maybe I want to branch off into a football analogy. Who is your team? Who is my team? Well, in one sense, it's the Pierre Governors, right? Or I apologize to my Fort Pierre friends, the Stanley County Buffaloes as well. I don't want you to feel excluded, right? You have a team based upon the place where God has put you. That's kind of what I come back to at the end of the day. Our physical location is not an arbitrary thing. It's a thing that has been ordained by God. It's a thing that God uses to accomplish the work of his kingdom. You being in Pierre and Fort Pierre, and I realize that you might not be in the Pierre Fort Pierre community. That's one of the, again, carefully curated benefits we have in our digital world. And somewhat ironically, I'm going to talk against that in a very certain, definite way on the flip side of this. So you might not be in the Pierre Fort Pierre community. And that's that there are benefits to be had on the YouTube platform. There are also great detriments to be had. I don't want to get censored by the YouTube platform, so maybe I'm not going to finish that sentence. But anyway, consider your team. Consider your team. For me, it's the Pierre Governors. I happen to reside on the east side of the river, so I am a Pierre Governor and not a Stanley County Buffalo. But now think about on a professional level. The team that I cheer for, I have no geographical residence within. And I think that can be true of everyone. The team that you cheer for in football, or in baseball, or in hockey, or in basketball, you may not have any geographical ties to that team. Now, I want you to consider for a moment, if you are in a place, let's go back to the high school level. If you are in the Pierre area, and for the sake of argument, let's say that everyone is a fan of the Pierre Governors, and that you alone root for a different high school team. That has a very isolating effect upon you. When you look out and you see green and white, everybody wearing green and white, the cars decked out in green and white, and you alone have a different team. There's nothing wrong with having a different team. What I want to concentrate on is the isolating effect that it has. You feel like you are not part of the Pierre Fort Pierre community. Now, I'm not talking against my Stanley County friends whatsoever, right? They are part of this community. And so my example is limited in that scope. But imagine if you were rooting for a team in Sioux Falls or a team in Rapid, and you alone were wearing those colors. It would feel isolating. It would break apart on some level the community into which God has placed you. Now, there's another benefit to being in a community aside from this shared and frequent interaction with the members. And that's the idea of building both independence and interdependence. And now I'm gonna expose a little bit of my ignorance here and talk about the idea of kind of the Wild West, where a town maybe wasn't visited ever or all that often, where the resources necessary for the survival of that community needed to come from that community. If you needed somebody to make clothes, well, there better be a tailor in the town. If you needed food, you probably made it, you grew it yourself. You didn't walk down to the grocery store where somebody else has made your food. The needs of the community were satisfied by the community. And what I want to do, this is kind of a bridging section, is contrast that with our nation primarily, but our world as well. Pick up any random trinket in your house. It's probably made in Asia. China. My water bottle has traveled more in its lifetime than I have. That's a sad statement. Our world is very interconnected. Our country, let's talk about food again. Our country is very interconnected. The lettuce in the store comes from the Southwest. A lot of the vegetables, the fruits, blueberries are not in season. Raspberries are not in season. Blackberries and strawberries are, I think I said strawberries twice, are not in season. But you can go to the grocery store and you can buy those things because they came from some other part in our country or world where they can grow those things. Now, there is very obviously a benefit to that. You can go out in not strawberry season and get strawberries. You can go out on Valentine's Day, which is coming up in a few months, and buy strawberries for that special someone in your life when strawberries bloom in the summer. There is a benefit to that. But what I want to do is weigh that against the price we pay for interconnectedness, the price we pay for our community not being both independent and internally interdependent. What I mean by that is virus. Imagine if we in the Fort Pierre community could have closed our borders to the outside, if we had been internally independent. No one comes, no one leaves. 2 weeks later, no virus. We return to life as normal. Now, what has kind of spurred this is this morning I read an article on an online periodical whose name I will not name for the sake of me not slandering or misquoting things, but it was about the Canadian province of Nova Scotia being virus-free. One of the ways they achieved that was by closing off their borders to the outside. No one came or left the province of Nova Scotia, and they are now virus-free. They live their lives with no fear whatsoever of death by virus. One of the things that made that possible is internal independence. The things that were needed for the province of Nova Scotia may have been made internally, could have been made internally in the province of Nova Scotia. If we in the Fort Pierre community were able to isolate ourselves, call whatever strict measures you need for 2 weeks, The virus is gone, everybody's over, and we are free. We are free. Now, that was, unfortunately, not possible because of this interconnectedness, which is normally a very good thing. But when you rely upon other states, when we rely upon other countries for basic goods, we pay the price of interconnectedness. We are unable to sustain ourselves, and we are seeing the price that we paid. Now, I'm not trying to say that the virus is a consequence of interconnectedness. I'm not trying to say anything like that. I'm saying that when we ought to be quarantined, we can't. We actually can't. When our community should be self-isolating, we just can't. And so we're in this sort of weird halfway stance where I guess we're sort of quarantined, but I see the trucks roll in and out of town carrying lots of different things, and people go to, ironically, the Pierre Governor's football game. And again, I'm not saying anything negative about these. I want to illuminate the price we pay for this interdependence and for this external independence, where we can go wherever we want and do whatever we want. There is a price to pay for this, and the virus makes it painfully obvious. Our external need for the things to sustain life, food and clothing and cups of water. Under normal circumstances, the price is hidden. Who cares if my water, I keep bringing this up, I might as well just keep it here. Who cares where your water bottle is made? Well, if there should ever be a time where fear of strangers also carries a medically significant risk, then it kind of does matter if your community is internally independent or if your community relies upon outside entities of any caliber. That's one of the prices we pay for this apparent independence. We can't lock down the roads in and out of town. We would starve. Most people, let me rephrase that, most people would starve. There are few individuals, I'm sure, who produce their own food and who could live for a while upon what they themselves make. But that is certainly not the case for the majority of folks here in town. We as a people, we as even a Fort Pierre community, are externally dependent upon water bottles and food, which again is normally, the cost of such a thing is normally hidden, is unimportant to us. But these last, golly, 8 months, 9 months, have shown us the cost of external dependence, of the weakness, not the weakness of our community, in the sense of our necessity, our inability to satisfy our own needs. Let me say that, because I want to be very clear. I am not being negative to the city of Pierre or the officials in the city of Pierre. I want to be very clear about that. This is a problem, quite frankly, throughout the world, except in places like Nova Scotia. This problem is shared across the globe, and it is a situation into which we as a human race have willingly entered, and now are realizing that there are prices to pay. Let me see what else. Now, I was talking with someone in a kind of related note to this community. I was talking with someone a while ago, and was talking about these are my words, not this individual's words. These are my words. The idea of being a mercenary worker. Again, being unanchored to your community. What I mean by that is the folks who work down at Avera St. Mary's Hospital kind of have to live close by. Now, close by is a relative term. There may be some who live in Oneida or Vivian, or right, who live kind of far away. They don't have to live in the Pier Fort Pier community. But there's sort of a limit on how far away that can be. It would be very unreasonable for an employee of Avera St. Mary's to live in Sioux Falls. Now, they certainly could, and they could commute 3 hours one way, twice a day, every day of their lives. But there's a point where it becomes silly. Now, it's quite frankly impossible for an employee of Avera St. Mary's to live in kind of the eastern side of Minnesota or Wisconsin or Illinois, because there aren't enough hours in the day for you to get to work, and get back home, right? It becomes impossible. Now, consider the need of physically being in that place. There is work to be done. The employees of Avera St. Mary's have to actually do stuff. I sound like I'm being very gross. I'm trying not to be gross. Do stuff to the people who come there. They have to place IVs upon physical people's arms. They have to take temperatures of physical people. They have to administer medicine to people who physically come into the building. Contrast that with what I'll call remote work. And again, there is nothing inherently wrong with remote work. It can have great benefits, and it can have prices to pay. What I don't want you to hear me saying is that a certain thing is good or a certain thing is bad. You have to weigh the benefits and the costs of, quite frankly, everything you do, and choose a certain path. Now, on some of those things, God has said very definitely, you need to do this and you can't do that. But for the vast majority of our lives, God doesn't leave us a detailed checklist. And that's one of the things that I hope this video is allowing you to do, is reflect upon your own situation and to, if necessary, if applicable, make changes. Assess what you are doing and reflect upon it to make the most God-pleasing choice. That's what I want you to do. So in any of the things that I'm saying, you may reflect upon your situation and you may come to the conclusion that your choice is different from the one that I am advocating. That's totally fine. That's totally fine. In these videos, I'm not telling you what to do. In my devotions, I'm usually telling you what to do because God has said, do this and don't do that. But in these videos, I am causing reflection upon a certain thing so that you can make a God-pleasing choice. Anyway, tangent aside, remote work. One of the benefits of remote work is that obviously you can be wherever you need to be. You can live here in Pierre and work for a company in Colorado or North Dakota or Minnesota or a company in India or China or Europe. You can be in a place and work anywhere in the world. Now, on the one hand, that has a great benefit. If your family has some physically necessary reason to be in a place, then you can stay with your family and be in that place and work anywhere. But where I entered this, I was talking with this individual, and they were, I won't even use the word worried, interested in the loss of identity as workers. And they gave an example. There was a competition in the office where there was this one type of worker in the office and another, and it was not like a hostile competition. It was kind of like a friendly competition between these two like different branches of the office. And the employees had identity as, oh, I'm team A. My work supports team A. This thing that I do in the competition helps the whole team A. And team B is trying to do the same thing. And they're trying to, let's call it, raise money for charity, right? Let's say that it's something good. I forget what it was exactly. But team A is trying to raise money for charity. Team B is trying to raise money for charity. And they have identity as a team. And so team A succeeds or fails as a whole team. Team B succeeds or fails as a whole team. One of the costs of remote work is this sort of loss of identity. Now, you still have identity. You're employed by a very definite company, but that can change in a moment. What I mean by that is you do a certain set of work and you can basically mercenary yourself to the highest bidder. If you find a different company willing to pay you a little bit more for the same work, doesn't it seem reasonable to be paid more to do the same work? Now, on the one hand, of course, I think everyone wants to be paid the most money possible for the same work. One of the costs as a mercenary is a loss of identity. The hypothetical you, freely trades these allegiances throughout your life, really working for the highest bidder. And that's why I call it a mercenary. That's what a mercenary does. They perform work for the highest bidder. So you, if you are one of those remote workers, are able to do the same work for the highest bidder. And it causes really a lack of identity, certainly a lack of community identity. You're not in the same space as these other workers are. You are on your own, and it has, again, an isolating effect upon you. You feel your separation from the community, especially in the case where the rest of the workers are all in an office in Denver, and you are the single employee who is working remotely. You feel disconnected. These other people in Denver have a certain level of togetherness that you do not have. And this can have an isolating effect. It becomes apparent that community is broken. There's so much that could be said on this. All right. One thing, and it's extremely anecdotal, so I wanted to save it for the end. I am going to, quite ironically, and I fully appreciate the irony of this, is just briefly, because I think it deserves its own reflection video, talk about our digital world. And I will do this in the example and then end it, because if I get into it, boy, we're going to be here for another few hours. There was a car commercial a while ago. And this commercial was both effective and ineffective because I can't remember which car company the commercial was for. So it was ineffective in that regard. It did not motivate me to buy their product, but it was effective in that it was memorable. Anyway, the car commercial started off with a teenage girl on her computer. Cell phones were not like pervasive at that point. I'm sure if it were today, she would be on her phone flipping through stuff. And she commented on her parents' lack of friends. She, the teenage girl, she was still using Facebook as a teenager. So that tells you how old this commercial was. Teenagers don't even know what Facebook is anymore. But anyway, this teenage girl was on Facebook and she had tons of friends. And she was flipping through, looking at her friends' lives, all of the pictures that they were posting. And her poor, sad parents had like 3 friends. And the teenage girl said that she was worried about her parents because they had no friends. And then the scene flips over to her parents in a car, and I can't remember what kind of car it was. It was a car commercial, after all. Her parents were in a car with other people like actually living life. They were doing stuff with other human beings, interacting with their community, actually being friends with their friends instead of just watching their friends live their lives. Our digital world has extreme costs that we must pay. Extreme costs that we must pay. But before I dive into that infinitely deep rabbit hole, we'll save that for some time in the future. The point, hopefully, you have realized, do stuff with real people. Be in your community, wherever your community is. Yes, there are benefits to transcending the geographical boundaries of community. There are also costs to be paid for that privilege. Weigh the benefits, weigh the costs. Decide for yourself how you will live your life. I'm not going to tell you how to do things like these. God has not told us how to do things like these. But just reflect. Reflect. That's what I hope I am driving you to do, is to reflect upon your situation. And if any of your behavior should be changed, then make that change. And if none of your behavior needs to be changed, then thank you for listening to me for 31 minutes ramble on about something which has utterly no applicability to you. You are truly a stalwart listening to something that has no bearing upon you. And I appreciate that. To all of the folks who have come with me on this journey, thank you. I appreciate you being here. Thank you for listening to me. If there's something I said that you disagree with, something I said that you appreciate, go ahead and post it down there in the comments. If you want to share this with somebody who you think maybe would be affected by something that I have rambled upon, go ahead and share this video. Whatever you do, if you do none of those, thank you for being here. I appreciate it, and I will see you next time.